Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. April 30th, 2018.
Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
I'm back in the saddle again, out where a friend is a friend.
I am. I'm back in the saddle and out west. Let me listen to this for a minute. See why I'm back here.
Back in the saddle again.
Why does the West Coast still appeal to me after I was in Washington for a week? Why? Well, I don't know that it does. Visited with the president in the Oval Office. No one knows about it. Visited with Vice President Pence. Discussed God, Faith, and Reason. No one out here heard about it. Visited with the new incoming Speaker of the House, McCarthy. They never heard of him. That's what I'm dealing with out here. It's a world of its own with mean, nasty, bullying deviants running the media on the West Coast, and yet I stay here because I live in my own world. I don't care if they're mean, nasty, bullying deviants. They're entitled to be mean, nasty, bullying deviants in the newspaper, television business out here. That's what they specialize in, meanness, nastiness, deviancy. Anything that is disgusting, they glorify. Anything that is decent, they hate. So I'm back, and here's the question to you. You want me to talk about Iran? Netanyahu just gave a big deal. Iran nuclear deal is based on lies. We knew he was going to do that. And he wants us enmeshed in another war. He wants us basically big brother again and go to war for him. I don't blame him. If I were Israel, I'd also want America to bomb Iran for me. And with Bolton in the National Security Advisor position, there's a good chance there will be a nice little war over there. Unfortunately for Bolton, he won't get a chance to bomb North Korea in the very near future because it looks like fat boys come around, but I'm not so sure of that either. I am not so sure that the Chinese are not playing us with the hugging and kissing of the South Korean leader. They could. I just don't trust them at all. And they're now playing the game that they're going to, make peace, not war, and that would be great. It's a funny thing because Friday, before I came home, I was thinking about this show, and I was saying, I'm going to recommend Donald get the Nobel Peace Prize based on the fact that if North and South Korea do merge in a peaceful manner, it will be the first president that we have now in 70 years who's been able to do this. That's a huge thing, especially since Obama was given a Nobel Peace Prize for no reason whatsoever other than denying his heritage from his mother. That was sufficient material for the fools in Stockholm, I guess, to give him a Nobel Prize. He did nothing. Remember all the wars that Obama was involved in, the covert and overt wars? You forgot about them? So I don't know if I want to talk about Israel. I'm going to ask you a question, those of you who are my loyal listeners. Many of you did not hear me on the radio last Monday nor last Friday, which were the only 2 days I had time for a radio show, where I talked about meetings with President Trump and Vice President Pence. But many of you don't even know about it. And if you'd like my thoughts on meeting with the President, Vice President, fine. Or even my thoughts about being in the congressional dining room, or my thoughts about the blood on the floor of the marble steps going around the steps in Congress, where a congressman was shot by a reporter back in 1890. You don't know about that. You think things are vicious now, and they are. I'll tell you something. There's been a hatred for the press probably since the Old Testament. In fact, I believe it was Vice President Pence who said to me there is a portrait in Congress of a president named Franklin Pierce who insisted on being painted in a pose where he holds a crumpled newspaper in his hand, a crumpled newspaper which he basically is throwing in the garbage can. That's how much he hated the news business then. But in the shootout, it was the newsman who won, of the story I'm telling you. Now, to show you the lack of humor in the world today, I'm sitting with the president, and about 10 to 12 minutes into the meeting in the Oval Office, which was an awe-inspiring moment for me, a red button flashed on the president's desk. I don't know what the red button is. I'm sitting in awe of the president of the United States, the most powerful man on earth. I see a red button flashing. I see the president using his left index finger or one of those fingers to press the button. And I said, Mr. President, did you just launch a nuclear weapon? And President Trump laughs and says, yeah, I launched an atomic bomb. And I said, no, I'm ordering a Diet Coke. Would you like one? I died laughing. I thought he wanted us out of there. I thought the button that they put on the desk was meant to flash after a few minutes so he could, dismiss us. But it wasn't. It was to tell his butler to bring in a diet soda. And that was the day I had with the president. But the point is, this is a New Yorker thing. President Trump has a great sense of humor. It's sort of Queens, New York sarcasm, Manhattan sarcasm. Don't they get it at the Washington Examiner? How did Paul Bedard, who's otherwise a good reporter, do a headline that says Trump jokes about launching nukes to radio host Michael Savage? I mean, I appreciate the publicity, but I really didn't mean to set off an international incident by ordering a Diet Coke, Mr. Bedard. Nobody seems to remember there's a thing called a sense of humor, not the least of which is the bullying thing that was at the Outhouse Correspondents' Dinner the other night. How it's gone from the White House Correspondents' Dinner to the Outhouse Correspondents' Dinner under a Margaret Talev from Bloomberg News is beyond me. But I think they should shut it down. A friend of mine called and said, you have to watch this woman. She's destroying the Correspondents' Dinner. She is so disgusting. She is so vile. She is so pornographically vile. I said, no, she isn't. To them, she isn't vile. This is what they say to each other behind the scenes. You're telling me that they don't talk like that to each other? I disagree with you. That is what they do with each other. This is how filthy and dirty they are. But, I once did a show on what is comedy. It was June 7th, 2017. I did a show on From Who's on First to Who Murdered Trump. And some of the questions I asked you was this. Speaking of the Outhouse Correspondents' Dinner of filth by the female bully. I asked these questions about comedy because I've been interested in comedy since the first grade of grammar school. When did comedy turn from jokes to political violence? What do you think of when you hear names like Bob Hope, George Burns, and now the likes of this dirtbag? When was the last time a comedian's joke actually made you laugh, a genuine belly laugh? How much comedy do you watch or listen to? Do you enjoy going to comedy clubs to see stand-up? And what kind of comedy do you go to see in person? How has comedy changed your life? What are some of your favorite classic comedians? You go back to Mort Saul, for example, who I grew up on. Not a dirty word passed that man's lips, and he was a king of comedy. Not a dirty word left his mouth. Jerry Lewis, one of the greatest, not a dirty word left his mouth. And so now we've reached a point where they have no sense of humor, because most of them are drug addicts, and as a result, they resort to filth to draw a laugh. The dirtier the better. About body parts, about sex change, attacking Republicans, attacking Mormons, attacking Christians. This is the stock and trade of the unfunny comedians. And so we could talk about comedy. We've gone from comedy to vile bullying. But what is comedy? What kind of genres are there in comedy? There's alternative comedy, anecdotal comedy, black comedy, dark comedy, blue comedy, cringe comedy. What's that mean? Deadpan comedy, improvisational comedy, insult comedy. Remember him? Who was the king of insult comedy? Mockumentary, musical comedy, physical comedy, where people use physical movement and gestures like a clown. There is prop comedy of the type used by NBC News when they're faking the news. That's prop comedy. There is heritage comedy, where people use a stereotype about their own race or culture. There's the sitcom, which is, of course, you know what that is. Surreal comedy, topical comedy, witty and wordplay. And I tend to use wordplay, which is more intellectual forms based on subtle manipulation of language. and puns. I find that the highest form of comedy is playing with words. By the way, it's interesting to note that this is quite cultural. Every society on earth has a form of comedy, and they're different than most societies. In the more primitive societies, clownishness is the kind of comedy that is used. Rarely have we seen this level of filth and degeneracy that we are now seeing in the United States of America. All right, so we could talk about my White House meeting, my vice president meeting, McCarthy meeting, the airplane food, which didn't exist. There is no such thing as airplane cuisine, there's no such thing as first class in American Airlines, by the way. That's just a bigger seat that sounds like an MRI machine, as I said to you coming out here. We can talk about the fact that I almost got phlebitis in my left leg from the 6.5 hours coming back and waiting for 2 hours. My left ankle turned black. I swear to God, I'm not going there again. You know what I found just before the show? I don't know how they do this. The congressman, you know that they only work 3 days a week? And they only work 3 weeks a month? I don't think you know this. They only have votes on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And many of them leave town on Wednesday night to go home for the, quote, weekend. The weekend being Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. How'd you like to have a job like that? You get to rape the taxpayer on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and you fly home to be with the kids and tuck them into bed Wednesday night through Sunday night. Interesting. It's a nice job if you can get it, and you can get it if you try. I don't want it. I'll tell you that right now. But last night was a big night. The night before was a bigger night. Today is a bigger day. There's lots of stories out there from Iran to the caravan of illegal bums trying to sneak into America, mocking us, mocking our border patrol, mocking our president. My blood boils when I see them hanging on the fence. You know, I don't like it at all. I don't like it one bit. I don't like it one iota, and I don't think we should tolerate it anymore. These are some of the thoughts and topics, in addition to the fact that there's a coming disease, according to some, that could wipe out 30 million people, according to not only some people who you may have heard of. I think Bill Gates put that out the other night, but I was at I came home Friday night, and I went to a neighbors gathering, which happens once a year, a little block party in a house, and one of the gentlemen is a pretty famous virologist. And he started to talk about a virus that's just hanging on the other side of us that is so virulent that it could wipe out 30 million people. It's sort of like the flu of 1918. And then I read the same thing coming from Bill Gates. And we could talk about the coming diseases. We could talk about Pence, Trump, McCarthy, my meeting with Lindsey Graham. Should Trump get the Nobel Prize? Oh, yes, there's one other little thing that those in the fake media don't want you to know. The latest poll, and a big one, shows that Democrats are losing ground with millennials. That's according to the liberal Reuters Ipsos poll of more than 16,000 registered voters ages 18 to 34, shows that their support for the crumbling communist Democrats and the rising Republicans is as real as we have always known. And the only reason we don't know that millennials like us and like our message of fiscal conservatism, of firm borders, of English as the language of the land and the culture of America is because it seems to me the vermin have taken over every aspect of the major media, as evidenced by the White House. Is it the White House? Oh, no, the Outhouse Correspondents' Dinner.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
You're listening to Michael Savage. Coming up at 3, it's Mark Levin on Talk Radio 560 KSFO.
Michael Savage back in his home base in the land of Nancy Pelosi. I didn't run into her, thank God, in the congressional dining room, or I would have left. In fact, I said to Congressman Culberson before we went in, I said, if Maxine Waters is in there, I'm not going in. If Pelosi is in the dining room, I am not going in. It was that simple. Luckily, they were not in. And I enjoyed the buffet very much. And I got to tell you something. in many ways, I am your representative. It dawned on me that many of you are living through the media, not only my show, but others. And then when a guy like me, the outsider, the perennial outsider, is invited into the Oval Office, which is as high as you can get, you can't get any higher than that. Let's not fool each other. Okay? And many of you thought that the president didn't care about you. The opposite is true. Because I didn't even tell you this on Friday, but as I was leaving the Oval Office, which was, the whole thing was sort of a dream. I can't remember every second, but I can recall certain things. The president stood up and he said to those in the room, and I don't even know, there weren't too many people there, his aides or whoever, Secret Service. He motioned to them and said, "This guy's been with me from the beginning." He didn't say, "Has he?" He said, "This guy's been with me from the beginning." He knows the difference between loyalty, even those who disagree with him on policies from now and again. He doesn't want slavish worshipers to say yes to everything he does. He probably respects me more than those who, tell him everything he does is right. This guy's been with me from the beginning, and I said, "Mr. President, I'll be with you to the end." And I'm not committed to this. And it's not just because of Korea. It's not because he had me into the White House. I was there before. He is as close as we are going to get to the message of borders, language, and culture. We've never had it in our lifetime, and we're likely never going to have it again after Donald Trump, whether it's another couple of years or let's say another administration, 4 more years after whatever's left. I don't even know what year it's in, 17. What do we have? How many more years do we have in this one? 3? 2.5? 2.5, about 2.5. So we have at least 2. He's not getting impeached. Forget about it. Even Maxine the Crazy stopped screaming impeach, impeach, impeach. She started saying just leave. You hear how sick she is? And the smarter Democrats stopped with the impeachment crap. They stopped it. They know there's nothing there. Let's take the calls. Jerry on KSFO. Jerry, what's on your mind?
Thanks for taking my call, Dr. Savage. And you've had me on a roller coaster since I started listening this hour, up and down with your astute thinking, and you definitely can put it into words. But I was just curious, did you meet Kellyanne Conway?
As a matter of fact, yes. As a matter of fact, as we were ushered to the president's desk in the Oval Office, there she was. She, flew off the desk, or not off the desk. She was on the side of the desk. I saw a bird fly by, like a colorful bird. And the president said, "Do you know each other?" I swear to God. He said, "You know Kellyanne, right?" I said, "Yeah."
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE.
Michael Savage back with you live from the San Francisco area after a whirlwind tour of the nation's capital. And a whirlwind tour it was. Doubt that I'll be back in the near future. Maybe never again. But never is a long time. Actually, I said to Mrs. Savage, I actually will never go back to Washington unless it's for a prize. Unless it's a major prize, there's no reason for me to go there. I mean, we got Skype. You heard of Skype, right? For a meeting. The old telephone works. Internet works. Email works. So what's the point of my going there again? It's a beautiful city. I really love being there. I would recommend that anyone listening to the show who has not been to the nation's capital, go there and take your children there. It's one of the most interesting places on the planet. Everywhere you walk, there's history in that area, and the architecture is stunning. Apparently the same architect who designed Paris designed Washington, D.C. It's hard to believe how beautiful a city can be. So we're talking about that. We're talking about, I don't know, comedy, if you want to call it that. The new poll, which is a big deal, 16,000 registered voters. I never should eat nuts. See, I didn't do this once last week. I was in Washington, and I didn't have my can of nuts with me. I'm probably allergic to them. 16,000 registered voters ages 18 to 34 shows that the Republican Party is a better steward of the economy, and their support for Democrats slipped at least 9%. Now, that's being reported by the far left, Ipsos poll. Reuters Ipsos, as far left as it goes. That means that I do not believe there's going to be a bloodbath come November. But it's going to be up to you, frankly. I mean, mainly it's going to be up to you, the supporters of Borders, Language, and Culture, to get out there and vote again. So everyone's after the young voters, but the thing to know is that young voters are not as wedded to a single party. And older people tend not to change their minds or their party affiliation. But many young people of all races are voting for Republicans now, even though they may have voted for Democrat Hillary Clinton in 2016, because the party of the Republicans is making it easy to find jobs. And never forget the Republican-led tax cut, although Nancy Pelosi, the billionaire, made it sound like it was crap and meant nothing. It means a lot to people. Here's an African-American man says, and a young guy says, it sounds strange to me to say this about the Republicans, but they're helping with even the small things. They're taking less taxes out of my paycheck. I noticed that. And, you know, there's an interesting thing in here, another dig at Trump again, which I have to read to you. It says, even though they may not like, although nearly 2 or 3 young voters polled said they do not like Republican President Donald Trump, 2 out of 3. Gee, I wonder why that is. Could it be the constant around-the-clock Trump derangement syndrome? Their distaste for him does not necessarily extend to all Republicans or translate directly into votes for Democratic congressional candidates. So they're digging their own grave by attacking Trump. It's that simple. And I think the old adage works, which is, if you're not a liberal at 20, you have no heart. If you're still a liberal at 40, you have no mind. It's as simple as that. But I changed it into something else, which is, what do you call a communist with 3 children? Well, it's a family show. What do you call a communist with 3 children? Yeah, I could say a conservative, but that's not the word I use. I usually like to say fascist in private parties. What do you call a communist with 3 children? A fascist. They all go to the extreme right. They want the whole country locked down. They do. They absolutely do. When they see what's being put into the children's heads, they become somewhat fascistic. It's the way of all flesh. So we don't know what's going to happen. I know that I'll be out here on the radio with God's will and your listenership come the October period. I will have a new book coming out, which I've not mentioned once yet. What month is this? Can I mention it at all? I think they know about it in the industry. It's called Mass Hysteria. It's going to be my last. I know you say, again, yes, it's my last one. I'm not doing them anymore. I'm devoting myself to religious or spiritual books and fiction after that, because the time is a-ticking. But I decided to do the one more book called Mass Hysteria, and I'm going to show you how the hysteria that we're living through right now is in some ways nothing new. We've had mass hysterias in the world and in this nation for a very long period of time. And the Trump derangement syndrome hysteria, the white privilege hysteria, the climate change hysteria is really nothing new. They're new iterations of old themes. And my book will be an attempt to stop the panic. But I've sensed for a long time that we're not going to lose 26 seats and lose Congress. I don't think we're going to do that. In fact, as I've said before, and I'm more encouraged today than I was before, I personally think Trump will go down in history as one of the greatest presidents of all time. Despite what you read in the media, despite the sick degenerates in the so-called late-night comedy clubs on NBC, CBS. Look at the crap they put on HBO and Showtime. Look at this garbage. When have you last seen anyone with a patriotic viewpoint getting a show on that channel? Tell me when. HBO or Showtime. Never. When have you last seen a Netflix production where someone like me gets a Netflix production? I could have a huge audience. I could have a monster audience with a Netflix production. Not a chance in hell, because the same people who have run HBO, who have run Showtime, who run the late night stoners who are not funny at all, are now running Netflix. So there's no way you're going to see any of this in the mainstream media. You ought to thank God I can still do it on the radio. Let's take some callers. No nuts, Michael, no more nuts. Line 7. Mike on KSFO. I'm getting some water, Mike. Go ahead. Mike on KSFO, line 7. Talk already.
Yes, hi, Dr. Savage. This is Mike. I'm a professional comedian and comedy writer for the past 20 years, and I grew up watching a lot of those Borscht Belt comedians you mentioned, and I've had the pleasure to write for a lot of the roast. And what happened at the Correspondence Dinner, for lack of better words, was not comedy. Comedy, as a whole, when it comes to writing jokes, there's structure. That was basically just someone getting up there, and instead of using humor to elevate people, it was basically her goal was to destroy people. And I don't find that to be...
No, I don't even think the destroying people part of it was the worst part. It was the vile sickness of that bully's words. I watched it for 2 minutes and turned it off. She's a typical left-wing feminist potty mouth. Every other word out of her mouth is about a body part, about sex. That's what it was that turned me off. That's not funny, is it?
No, you're 100% right. As a whole, humor, I believe is meant to heal people, not hurt them. And you take someone like a Don Rickles, who you were mentioning before, who's an insult comedian, you actually felt great. It was an honor and a privilege to get ridiculed by him, because it was not meant to tear the person down. It was meant to actually heal in a healing way, to point.
In other words, he would find a certain foible or flaw of a personality, and he would magnify it without destroying the person, sort of, right?
100%. And that was the craft that the older comedians from the generation past knew how to do that. I was good friends with people like a Professor Irwin Corey, Will George.
So why do you think this generation of degenerate sickos can't do that anymore?
I think it has a large part to do with the fact that they have no moral compass. They lack boundaries. When it comes to writing jokes...
Wait, no, you're saying something interesting. In other words, when they start to riff or run on a stream of consciousness, there's no withholds on issues such as embarrassment or self-respect. They have no self-respect, so they can't be embarrassed.
100%. And just to build on that, I'm an observant Jew, and being bound by...
How can an observant Jew be a comedy writer? I mean, that's an oxymoronic concept.
Well, I'm also a conservative, so it's that's two whammies against.
Yeah, well, now I'll give you one. How much work do you get?
Not a whole heck of a lot.
Come on.
Yeah.
I don't think Hollywood's beating down your door.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I actually was performing in San Francisco about 2 years ago on Christmas, and I can't even tell you, I was doing 6 shows, and literally after every single show, I had to take out one joke after the next. In a town that considered itself to be very progressive and very liberal and open.
Well, what do you mean? You had to remove the jokes? Why?
Yes, because on the first night, the first show, I was making jokes. It was like in the Tenderloin area, and I was trying to make jokes about the mayor and this one and that one, and they said you can't make fun of them. I'm like, what do you mean you can't make fun? I said,
oh, you mean the management of the club said you can't pick on Nancy Pelosi, you can't pick on the mayor, you can't pick on the homeless, you can't pick on the feces in the street. You can't pick on the corruption. You can't pick on the potholes and where's the billions of dollars going, like who's stealing the money for the highway funds. Those are not permissible, huh? Only attacking Trump, conservatives, and let us say Mormons.
Yeah, well, basically anything that does not offend them, which is basically everything. But I was supposed to do about a half hour. By the final show, I was only doing about 5 minutes. They asked.
I got to tell you this, Mike. I've lived in this city a long time. It is the meanest city on the planet. And another thing, driving in from the airport, from SFO back home, when I came home last week, I have never seen a major city with more destructively broken roads than in this city. I've been in Malaysia, the roads are better. Washington, D.C., the roads are better. There were no homeless bums in the Washington, D.C. that I saw. And I moved around quite a bit. I didn't see the bums. They were here and there, but they were not laying in the street. They were not accosting people. They were not defecating in the street. And this goes to the primary issue of our time. Any city that is run by super left-wingers like Pelosi, Feinstein, and you name them, is a city that is crumbling. It's as simple as that. And I don't understand how people can put two and two together. This is the dirtiest, most broken city in the United States, if not in the Western world.
Well, it's interesting because when I was there and I was pointing out things that were the truth, humor comes from the truth, being able to highlight, you know.
All right, so here's a truth I wrote Saturday morning, right? Living in a decaying provincial city. Life goes on as it has, where the average person has less intelligence than a sea cucumber, the sea cucumber never having read any newspapers. Is that funny?
It's very funny. Could I use it?
It's a sarcastic line. The average person in San Francisco has less intelligence than a sea cucumber. Why? Because the sea cucumber never read any newspapers. I think that's a funny line. Notice there are no dirty words in it. Everything that I just said is true, and everybody knows it's a truth. Anyway, my friend, thank you for calling and joining the dialogue on the Savage Nation. I invite you to call. There's one open line at 855-407-282. We're not limiting it to comedy because of the degenerate, filthy bully girl from the outhouse dinner the other night. We don't care about the degenerate, filthy bully girl. By the way, I had met Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It's interesting. While I was speaking with the president, now that I think about it, she came in toward the end of the meeting because there was a crisis over something. Now that I remember it, she's a wonderful person. I even told the president I really like her. It's interesting. Let me tell you what else happened with Sarah Huckabee Sanders in that meeting when I return, right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Michael Savage, weekdays from noon to 3 on Talk Radio 560 KSFO.
You know, there's big news in the media in the last 2 weeks. Simply Safe won Editor's Choice Awards from CNET Mag, PC Magazine, and The Wirecutter. These are three respected product testers. What they did was they put Simply Safe through a battery of tests. They compared it to other home security products, and Simply Safe won every time. And I've been telling you about Simply Safe for a while now, my opinion. Best home security system. They protect over 2 million Americans. This is a home security system you actually will want in your home. The sensors are tiny. You're not even going to notice them. Easy to use. You can control it from your phone. But wait, here's the most important reason. This isn't a gadget. It's comprehensive protection for all your windows, your doors, your entire home. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Professional alarm monitoring there for you around the clock. Just $15 a month. No contracts. No one else is doing it like this. I want you to learn more about how Simply Safe can help protect your home. Simple. Just go to simplysafesavage.com. That's simplysafesavage.com. Now, here's an article that just came in. The African Wildlife Federation lauds the UK government's action to ban ivory sales. Thank God for the United Kingdom in the sense that they just announced the ban on ivory sales, another victory for the future of elephants. I tried to appeal on this issue, and I'm going to tell you more about it in the next hour. You may not know it, but the president himself does not want elephant imports, nor tiger imports, nor lion imports, nor rhino horn imports. He thought it was over. He did not know he had been undermined from within. I'm telling you like it is. I'm giving you the bottom line here. The United Kingdom announced a ban on ivory sales, right? Now, as you may remember, the president himself said that we should ban the import of these things, and he was reversed by people in his own administration, I think primarily Zinke and Interior. I mean, let's name names here and stop mincing words, or else we're not going to get anywhere. And every day is a day too late. These are some of the most noble, family-oriented creatures on the planet. And I'll tell you something else from a purely political point of view. The Republican Party is going to lose women and millennials unless they get on top of the environment and wildlife issues. Trust me on that one. They already have you on the border and lock her up. We already got that. And I am the only person in the media on the conservative side, the only one who has any authority to speak about these issues, because I've been doing it for over 40 years. I'm not inventing it. I'm not coming up with it. I'm not trying to win anything for it. If I told you the names of the congressmen and even the senators who I met who said, you're 100% right. We're bleeding women. Those are the exact words. And they said, Savage, you're 1,000% right. Please work with us on helping to convince the president and others to reverse this importation of elephant ivory, rhino horns, and things like that. They understand how desperately the animals themselves need this, but from the point of view of politics, they need it. Facebook, the wildlife trafficking network. Oh, what a story that is. Tell Mark Zuckerberg to shut down all wildlife trafficking on Facebook. Zuckerberg, shut it down. Shut it down, you pig.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. 855-400-SAVAGE.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
So, I'm a dog, and I just got adopted by this new human guy, and I'm starting to wonder how he got along without me. I mean, okay, something as simple as walking around the block. He's got this leash thing, and he puts me on one end and him on the other, and I'm just taking him around. I think he's afraid of getting lost. Without that leash and me guiding him along, I don't think he'd find his way back home. But it's kind of cute.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.